Tuesday morning. And of course, you know, on Tuesdays we talk all things health, and it's Medical Tuesdays, we like to call it in sometimes. Now, in South Africa, the month of August is not just Women's Month, but it is also Organ Donor Awareness Month. And although South Africa is a world leader in the field of organ transplantation, there are a number of patients still waiting for organ transplants all over the country. Now, here's something to think about. One organ donor can save up to 7 lives and transform over 50 lives.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, those big numbers. And here to help us unpack that and the topic of organ donation, please welcome our trusted multimedia health specialist, Dr. Darren Greenwood, specialist physician and pulmonologist and medical lead of the heart and lung transplant unit at the Groote Schuur Hospital, Dr. Greg Caligaro. And later on, we're going to be joined by author of the phenomenal book, Get Me to 21, Gabby Lowe. Gents, welcome. Doctors.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Greg, I don't know if you know this, but Darren has a serious man crush on you, do you know that?
You don't need to be exposed.
He speaks of you in complete admiration, and we look forward to delving into your pool of knowledge in this chat on this Tuesday. So let's first talk about, Darren, how does one become a potential organ donor? Is there certain criteria?
Yes. So in South Africa, obviously, if you want to learn about the process, lovely website, organdonorfoundation.org.za, so odf.org.za, and a lot of frequently asked questions on there. Am I eligible? What's the youngest age, the oldest age? Can I donate if I've had hepatitis and jaundice as a child? Type 1 diabetics, for example, and etc. And also, obviously, some relevant questions surrounding specific infections and that kind of thing. So, yes, we are very keen for people to actually start asking those questions.
Yes.
Also, the role of family in the process of organ donation as well, in that decision-making process. And then when the time comes that the family are extremely well informed, because it doesn't mean that if you've signed up to donate and become an organ donor, that you necessarily, when you do surmise or pass, that process is actually successful and you know, is actually results in a positive donation.
Yes.
The family obviously might not have been aware of your condition or your pledges, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit to consider when it comes to donating and making that decision to donate. Can one still be an organ donor if they've got a pre-existing medical condition, say HIV, for example? Do they need to do tests?
Okay. Well, I mean, firstly, what you have to say is that almost anyone can be an organ donor, bearing in mind that there's lots of organs that are being donated, and that whether one of your organs is not suitable doesn't mean that any of the others can't be used as well. I mean, an example would be someone with long-standing diabetes. We would be quite circumspect about taking a kidney from that donor, but the lungs may be perfectly usable for organ donation. So it really depends on your state of health at the time of your death. And something like HIV really is a moving target because, as you know, historically, it's been a contraindication, but with advances in ARVs, I mean, it's basically becoming like a chronic disease. At Groote Schuur, we've got a pioneering HIV-positive to HIV-positive kidney transplant program. So those indications are expanding on an almost kind of weekly basis, and it's certainly not something that we would discourage someone from becoming an organ donor because they're HIV-positive.
Yeah. Let's quickly delve a little bit more into your world, Greg, and understanding what are some of the most in-need organs.
Right.
And generally, if a person were in need of such an organ, how long would they be waiting for to get that transplant done?
That's quite a difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look just at the figures, there are about 5,000 people, more or less, that require an organ transplant in South Africa. The overwhelming majority of those are people who need a kidney transplant. Now, the reason for that is that if your kidneys fail, we've got a support modality, namely dialysis, where people can be kept alive indefinitely. I mean, it's obviously very time-consuming. It comes with its own complications, but you can wait for years on a transplant list for a kidney. People with heart, lung, and liver problems aren't so lucky. So if those people often need a transplant within a certain length of time, and if they don't, they're going to die. There aren't a lot of support mechanisms to be able to keep them alive while waiting for a transplant. So the length of time you wait is very dependent on which organ you need. It depends on your blood group, because we can usually only transplant across blood groups. There are sometimes some sizing issues, so you can't necessarily take lungs from a 1.9 meter tall rugby player and put them into a 16-year-old a woman. And lastly, of course, there's the cross-matching, so whether you've got antibodies against the donor lungs. So those can be quite variable, and people can wait from a matter of days or weeks to years on a transplant list. And that's very demoralizing for doctors and patients, because I always like to say to people, or to my patients, it's like you're training for a marathon, but you don't know when the marathon's going to be.
Wow.
And, long wait list mortalities are discouraging. And when your patients die on waiting lists, it's a very demoralizing thing for patients and for doctors.
And I think that just goes to highlight the need, and that's what we are trying to create awareness around during this conversation. And please do engage with us, throw those questions onto our Facebook page, Expresso Morning Show SABC3. And if you'd like more information, check out that website, odf.org.za. There is an emergency line on screen, and also a toll-free line, 0800 222 6611, if you'd like to find out more information. We'll continue our conversation with the doctors shortly.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. This is your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's a Tuesday morning, the 27th of August, and the month of August is Organ Donor Awareness Month in South Africa. We are trying to broach that conversation, a very difficult one at times to have, regarding the need for organ transplants in South Africa, the many patients that are still on waiting lists waiting for organs. And of course, if you're looking for more information, go to odf.org.za. You can dial 0800 222 6611. And of course, we are in the insightful company of Drs. Darren Green and Dr. Greg Caligaro to chat to us about this. And we've been sharing some thoughts all throughout. And one thing that you wanted to highlight, Dr. Caligaro, was how many transplants actually happen in a year, just so that you can bring us into the field of what's happening on the ground.
Okay, so I'm going to round off just for simplicity, but we do about 500 transplants a year, of which about 150 are corneal transplants. So those are eye operations. So they obviously vision saving, but not life saving. And then the next big group is kidney transplants. Now remember, kidneys, you only need one of them. So if you've got a family member with kidney failure, you can donate them a kidney if you are an appropriate match. So, so those are, again, operations that don't involve donation after brain death, which is what we're talking about. When you get down to the heart, liver, and lung transplants, that number is very small. It's probably about 70 to 90 transplants a year, about 25 hearts, about 40 livers, of which some of them are actually segmental livers that parents give to their children, and then anywhere between about 10 and 20 lung transplants a year. So it's a very small amount. And when we look at South Africa's organ donor rate, it's about 1.5 to 1.7 per million people. Now that's, you've got to contrast that between to countries like Spain, which are the best. They're about almost 50 per million, and most of Europe and Scandinavia is above 20. Even countries like Israel and Iran, which have got very strong kind of religious considerations when it comes to organ transplant, are up at 10 per million people. So we really we really aren't doing very well. I mean, look, we're the only country in Africa that can actually provide data on our organ donation rates. But, we're way off the pace.
1.5 per million is a massive disparity.
It is. And this highlights the fact that we're not really a big organ donation or donating country, but this is probably because of various factors and misconceptions and myths around cultural reasons and religious ones. Is that a big thing?
Yeah, and I think also just the preparation of understanding the process, the lack of education around the process of organ donation. People are scared to ask those questions, and because they're not prepared in advance, when you are in that situation, it's uncomfortable to bridge those conversations. Even in the ER where I work, it's also really difficult at that time if the family hasn't been contacted and prepped for the discussion.
Let's talk about another part of organ donation, focusing on tissue donation and how that differs from organ donation.
So the tissues that you can donate are skin, bone, tendons, your cornea, and then also your heart valves. So these are much less vascular tissue. So the big consideration in transplantation is what we call ischemic time, the amount of time that the tissue or organ has been without blood flow and oxygen. Okay, because like obviously anything, if that's interrupted, then the cells can die and the tissue or organ can become unusable. Because these tissues are relatively avascular, in other words, they don't have a lot of blood supply, their ischemic times are very long. So whereas a heart or a kidney or a lung or a liver needs to be removed from the body and used pretty soon, those tissues can be retrieved at a later time, even days down the line. So they're much more resistant, to this ischemia that we talk about. And of course, you know, they can be used multiple times. And that's why we talk about, although the major solid organs can help 6 or 7 people, you know, those tissue grafts help people with burns and people with traumatic injuries, and one person can help up to 50 or 60 people. So there's really a big benefit to be derived from being a tissue donor.
Yeah,
There's
so much
always some level of need, and it differs from a tissue to organs that can be quite life-saving. How do I know who will receive my loved one's organs?
I tell you what, can we hold on that question for a second, because we do need to go to another segment, but we will be back with the doctors a little bit later to carry on discussing this on this very important Organ Donation Awareness Month in the month of August.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. This is your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso on SABC3. It's a Tuesday morning. Thank you so much for joining us for our health segment this morning. And also joining in with the doctors, we have Gabby Lowe, author of the book Get Me to 21. Now, the book focuses on Gabby's daughter, Jenna, who was diagnosed with pulmonary arterial hypertension, an extremely rare illness that after a double lung transplant led to her untimely passing 4 months before her 21st birthday. Now, Gabby is here to share her story of how she fought to get her daughter to 21, and we really do appreciate having you here, Gabby.
Thank you for having me here.
So good to have you here, and what an incredible story to share. But please tell us about the Get Me to 21 campaign, but also the story of how this book came along and how your daughter, Jenna Lowe's story can inspire and has changed so many people's perceptions and lives out there.
So she really did do that. Whilst she was waiting for her transplant, she was emergency listed in May 2014. It was then that we realized just how dire, and I know you've been talking about that, the situation is in South Africa around organ donation. There just isn't enough education. We don't have enough donors. It's a dire situation. And so Jen came to me. She was really ill by then. She could no longer really leave the house. She was on full-time oxygen. She was on a mobility scooter. She was on an intravenous medication into her right heart chamber. She was on many medications. But she was still fighting to live. And she was no victim. And she said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And that's where Get Me to 21 came from, because she was approaching her 20th birthday. She wanted to get to 21. Well, in fact, she wanted to live. She wanted to do a million things. But she also wasn't even sure if Get Me to 21 would impact her. But she knew that she had to make a difference to others. And so Get Me to 21 was literally a 40-second video imploring the whole nation, inviting everybody to her 21st birthday and saying all you have to do to come is become an organ donor. And that video went viral. Absolutely. In 3 months, she single-handedly changed the organ donation rate by 287%.
Wow.
There was a 287% increase. What does that tell us? It tells us that people just don't understand how, where to sign up, what it entails. There really is a lack of education. And what I want to know, because I was listening in on your conversation, is who's driving that? Why is no one driving that?
Yes.
And
Who should be driving that?
A lack of understanding of the many instances where people are confronted with very rare diseases where, you know, it had nothing to do with a lifestyle choice that they made. It just befalls you, and you find yourself in a situation where you do need an urgent transplant of some or other kind of organ. So, Dr. Caligaro, explain to us about this rare disease that Jenna had.
So, I mean, your lungs basically are organs that bring blood and oxygen in close proximity to one another. And the surface area of your lung is 70 square meters, so that's about half a tennis court, of very fine blood vessels that traverse the lung. What happens in pulmonary arterial hypertension, for reasons that we don't completely understand, is that that bed of blood vessels becomes fibrosed and blocked and narrowed and constricted, such that the blood that is being pumped to the lungs gets increasingly under pressure. So the way we talk about high blood pressure, we usually talk about that on your systemic circulation, and pulmonary hypertension is when the blood pressure in the blood vessels going to the lungs go up. Eventually what that leads to is problems with amount of oxygen that gets into your blood, but also the amount of blood that can be pumped around your body. It's like slowly closing the tap on a hose pipe. And people become progressively more and more short of breath, such that the activities of daily living, like washing and dressing or even climbing a flight flight of stairs becomes impossible. And the only way we can really treat it is by giving supplemental oxygen and medications that try and relax those blood vessels so that the blood pressure goes down a little bit and more blood can get through to the systemic side of the circulation.
Yeah.
Those medications are rare, they're very expensive. Most of them aren't available in South Africa. This is a rare disease. Funders are reluctant to pay the big sums of money that are required, and really transplantation becomes the only option once all these treatments fail.
We know that people in need of organs are part of family units. They
Yes.
are our mothers, our sisters, our fathers. They are within families. What does organ donation mean for families? When somebody's looking for an organ and needing an organ, what does that do within a family unit? What does that do to everybody else around?
It means hope. It means a chance at life. And you know what really upsets me about South Africa is we have a high crime rate and so many accidents. These are organs where we could be making sense of that somehow by giving life to someone else. You know, those are senseless deaths, and it's so painful for that family. But in fact, everyone keeps saying that organ donation is a difficult topic. I think it's a conversation about life, because in some way, you are then giving life to somebody else. I don't think it's a difficult conversation. It's a conversation about life. This is the ultimate gift. You don't need your organs when you're dead. You don't need them. And the conversation needs to be had with families. Because if you would accept an organ for your child, for your mother, for your loved one, for your brother, for yourself, then why are you not a donor? If you would accept that organ on behalf of your child, why are you not a donor? That's the question.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's quite hypocritical to want to receive an organ if you had to get into a position where you'd want to absolutely need one. And I think that mindset is something we need to actually look at changing every single day. Open the conversations from school level all the way through to corporates.
So where's the education plan that talks about that? Where's the education plan that starts in schools that talks about organ donation and what that is? And who's funding that? And whose responsibility is it?
We need to open up
Our
that
shared
conversation.
responsibility. It should
Yeah.
be.
For all of us.
Yeah. And as we talk about the education of it, I'm just thinking to myself that, you know, God forbid something should ever happen to me or to you or to anybody, just as a circumstance in your life that you didn't predict or have any role in bringing upon yourself, wouldn't you want that gift of life and that changing that narrative, making it a conversation about life?
It's not a conversation about death, it's a conversation about life. Exactly, we need to change the narrative. That's what I believe.
Wow. Doctors, Caligaro, Dr. Green,
Gabby.
thank you very much for joining
And
us.
Jenna.
And Jenna. And Christy, whose birthday it is today. I just had to say happy birthday to Christy.
Well, Get Me to 21 is available right now. It's an incredible book from all leading books retailers. So get your hands on this remarkable book that documents the life of Jenna Lowe.
Yeah, and if you'd really like a copy, then you are in luck because we have 5 books up for grabs, and all you have to do is SMS the keyword WIN with your full name to 33728, and the names will be randomly drawn. They'll be sent a copy of Get Me to 21, and the competition is open and entries close at 9 a.m. today. That gives you
About 10 minutes?
even less than that. SMS right now. If free SMSs don't apply, and T's and C's can be found at expressoshow.com. Thank you very much.